All right. So I'm going to start reading, and I'll try to break this up into sections so that it can be um, handled afterwards, processed. So I want to talk about gender, why it exists, and where does it come from. In order to do so, I need to talk about God. This will be from a Catholic perspective, hopefully at least. So, in the beginning, there was God. Before anything else was created, there was God, a being who has the reason of existence as part of his very nature. One of the greatest questions is, why does anything exist? Maybe you don't believe in God, but the question is still there. Why does the universe exist? Where did it come from? Either all of this matter or the Big Bang just jumped into existence, or there is a being who somehow has the reason of existence as part of his nature. Still hard to fathom either way, but it seems more plausible that there is a being who has at least what us human persons have, and then some. So we believe God to be an intellectual substance with free will. God is the original being before all else. God has the power of being, of existing. It is a power to be that is unlimited. He is and can share that existence in or to other things as he wishes. It is a complete power. When God knows, another power of his knowledge has the power to know completely. It is not an inadequate knowledge like we have, which only knows a part of things. God's knowledge knows a thing through and through. Every facet of a thing's existence is knowable to God. But before God created anything, what was there to know? The only thing to be known before God created other things was himself. So, God's knowledge of himself is complete. He knows all of himself. In a very real sense, God's knowledge of himself was the same as himself. It matched himself completely. There is a dynamic here that is noteworthy. Since God's knowledge of himself is complete, it included all that he is. It included being a person and being self-knowing. In fact, we can see that part of the nature of what it is to be a person is to be self-knowing. This self-knowing in God included his self-knowingness, and thus, in God, his self-knowing is a dynamic which proceeded to a self-knowing being. His concept of himself thus has self-knowing and is his utterance, his word of himself, a word which has self-knowing. Thus, we see that in God, his self-knowing leads to a second person in the Godhead. That self-knowing facet of being a person is a, quote, personing, end quote, act, a dynamic by which a person proceeds. This personing act is why we call the first person of the Trinity God the Father, and why we call the Word who proceeds from the Father the Son. To show this, which is not really possible, I draw an asterisk in space to represent the singular point of God existing. I then draw a circle, a sphere, around the asterisk to represent all that God is. Then I draw in from the edge of the sphere the act of God's self-knowing as it is interiorized in him. It then moves in and through his point of knowing and passes the event horizon of self-knowing to an other who is self-knowing, all that God is, and of the same substance. The passing through image then moves on to be a sphere itself, sort of as the Father was a sphere that represented him. So you have a almost like a barbell, dumbbell sort of image of two bubbles, but one is collapsed in on itself in self-knowing, and proceeds through its interiority to an other in fullness as a sphere. It's a simple graphic, but it's there because of those reasons of self-knowing and interiorization, passing through to the fulfillment of self-knowing in an other. So the two share the being and existence of God, but are in relation to each other in identity as to who proceeds from whom by this dynamic of self-knowing.